Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back to the Sandbox.
Hi.
Hi. This is Rachel.
Hey everyone, I'm Rachel.
This is Rachel's dear friend, and very kindly accepted my invitation to have a conversation, to share a little bit of her Torah and her perspective on a topic that is very interesting to me and hopefully will be interesting to some of you. And this will be the first time on the channel that we're actually directly quoting something from the oral tradition. And I'm excited about that and excited about how we're going to engage with the content and with the process and see what comes of it and see how we can come to some kind of better understanding of the ways in which we can relate to Torah and to consciousness and to the things that we bring into ourselves which change our consciousness. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to an opportunity to learn some Torah and to talk about it and maybe time into the future, because wherever you are, hearing this in the future, you can chat with us and tell us things, and so it'll be kind of neat, this is where we are and what we're thinking about now, but then it's also a cool opportunity for both of us to be able to continue to engage with you as you share your thoughts. And I imagine for both of us, the way the Torah works is it'll unfold and unravel, and thank you in advance for helping us to do that.
Amen. Amen.
Okay.
So I wanted to bring a little passage from the Gemara, from the rabbinic tradition, specifically from the tractate, the Masechet Taanit, that I became first aware of my very first year of rabbinical school, when I first started sharing with some of my teachers that I was interested in this particular intersection between Torah and consciousness and alteration of consciousness through different modalities, psychedelics being one of them, but not exclusively. And one of my Gemara teachers mentioned offhand, he goes, oh, like that passage in Taanit, which talks about drug of life. And I said, what are you talking about? It says directly in the Gemara, drugs? What are we referring to here? So he sent me to go look for it, and I did. And I've been poring over it now for several years to myself, and have been reflecting on it and figured this would be a great platform to bring it and to sort of muse about it a little bit together, as we both enjoy doing when it comes to Torah and Talmud. So I'm going to read it to you, first in Hebrew, then I'll translate it, and then we'll see where it takes us and what it brings up for us and what it stimulates, and allow the process to unfold. So, Tanya Rabbi Bena'a Omer, Kol ha'osek b'Torah lishma, Torato na'asek lo sam chayim, shene'emar, eitz chayim hi l'machazikim ba, va'omer, rif'ut tihi l'sharech, va'omer, ki motze'i matzah chayim. V'chol ha'osek b'Torah shelo lishma, na'asek lo sam hamavet, shene'emar, ya'arof kematar likhi, ve'ein arifa ela hariga, shene'emar, ve'yarfu sham et ha'egla banachal. End. So, what did I just say? Mm-hmm. So, it's reported in an anonymous rabbinic baraita, which is a layer of rabbinic text which is coincident with the Mishnah, but wasn't necessarily codified within the Mishnah corpus, but is from that same period. And this is a rabbinic saying that comes passed down in Taanit through the teacher Rabbi Bena'a. And he says, everyone who engages with Torah lishma meaning in this for its own sake, everyone who engages with Torah for its own sake, their Torah will be for them like a drug of life. As it says, Eitz chaim hi l'machazikim ba. It is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it. And it says, Rifut tehila sharach. It will be a healing for your navel. And it says, Ki motzi'i matzah chayim. Because the ones that find me, meaning the divine, find life. But all those that engage with Torah, not for its own sake, lo lishma, na'aseit lo sam hamavet. It will be for them like a drug of death. Like it says in the book of Devarim, Ya'arov kematar likhi, which literally translates to my teaching or my insights will drop down like rain. And Rabbi Benah goes on to say, Ve'ein arifa ela hariga. And dropping, arifa, really means killing. Like it says, again in Devarim later, Ve'arfu sham et ha'egla hanachal, coming from the account of the Egel Arufa, where they would break the neck of the Egel in the Nachal, in the valley or in the river. And this was part of a process.
Say that again. What's he saying about?
He's saying that Ya'arof kematar likhi, that the dropping of the teaching like rain, which he sees as connected to understanding Torah lo lishma, as being a drug of death. He's seeing that word araf not as dropping, like drip, drop, drip, drop, but there's something there that's about killing, which is how it connects to mavet. That actually the teaching itself will come down like death. It will rain a kind of death. And so that's where the Braita ends.
Okay.
So we have these two forms of Torah: Torah lishma, Torah lo lishma, which for Rabbi Benah accounts for a kind of drug, and either the drug can give life, or the drug can give death. So my first question I have for myself, and I want to ask to you, is what does it mean for you to think of Torah as a drug or as a substance that can confer life or death?
Okay. Happy to go there because that's interesting, but also because we just learned through all of it. I'm also, thank you, Benny, for bringing this text, reading it, translating it. I'm hearing it for the first time, and I'm like holding on to something at the end. We'll get there to say about that. Okay. What does Torah as a drug mean to me? Ooh. I think just the idea of Torah being a gateway to expanded consciousness, which is like, okay, what does that mean? And I think for myself, it makes a lot of sense in my personal journey that like I was someone who, in my own spiritual path, found God in a lot of places that were outside of a Jewish context, outside of the context of Torah, including like scenes where experimenting with like, actual drugs was like part of spiritual exploration. And then there came a time in my life where like that was no longer serving me, and it's not something that I'm actively involved in. But in the time that I'm not doing that, I like really found a love for Torah and for text. And I think there's like just the idea that that learning for its own sake, like even if it's from a text or if it's from life, or the times when the deeper I am in my own experience with both is like there's the overlap where it's like if I'm in a practice of learning Torah, meaning like the body of text that exists in Jewish tradition, there's more and more that I'm able to relate it and see inside of my life in the text. And that also, like, when I really get into it, it can open up new dimensions of my understanding of my experience, but also, like, open up new dimensions, not just of understanding, but like it can go in any direction. So like there were times in my life where like I was really excited in my spiritual path to like leave a material dimension, and that like Torah can take you there. Torah can take you like, wow, like I'm beyond the material. And in the last handful of years, it's been really important to me to like consciously be grounded and be of this dimension and be able to like do something with the Torah and the understanding that I have. But it's like it's a way, I think, it can be a gateway to anywhere you want, but I think what's great about it being a tree of life is that it also has roots. Mm-hmm. And so there's also something that can keep us grounded in this realm that we're in. Mm-hmm. Like that's real. I think so.
We're here.
We're also all those other places, but it's like can be a way to explore and also a way to
ground.
To stay here.
Stay rooted.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really resonate with that. I'm reminded of a teaching from someone who I really respect, whose name is Jules Evans, who some of viewers coming to this channel might be familiar with, who's a very literate, sensible voice in the broader psychedelic field and a philosopher. And in one of his books, The Art of Losing Control, sort of brought my attention to the idea of reading and the experience of reading as a consciousness alteration experience, right? Like I look at these little marks on a piece of tree, mm-hmm. and that experience of taking in those images, those pictographs of letters which form phrases, which form sentences, which construct thoughts, which create worlds, that I'm bringing into me, and I'm allowing it to actually fire my engine in new and stretching ways. And that's what reading is. I mean, it's one of the beauties of reading for so many people. It can take you to so many new places that you never knew you could imagine. Mm-hmm. And once he brought forth that understanding of what it is to read something, mm-hmm. that it's not just a passive reception of data points from an external source, but it's rather an active process of being in dialogue with the words on the page and actually allowing oneself to be changed and to go through a process of change in light of what's being introduced through that content and through the way the content is presented. Mm-hmm. And how different is that intake of something external for the sake of altering my consciousness, mm-hmm. versus introducing some other external mm-hmm. substance into myself for the sake of altering my consciousness. Mm-hmm. Now, certainly we can talk about degrees of magnitude, but you don't have to look far to see all the ways through history, and even now in the present moment, the way that the books that we read and the books that we allow ourselves to become exposed to mm-hmm. has significant impact on the way that we construct the narratives of our lives and how we, build community and how we generate shared senses of value. And I think about all the book burnings that have happened throughout time, and that, I can imagine in other contexts people like throwing all their pills on the fire and being like, this kind of substance is forbidden and we don't mm-hmm. want our minds to go there. People have been doing that for a long time with the substance of books, and also specifically the substance of Torah, mm-hmm. and Kabbalah even more specifically, and even Rambam, even Maimonides went through that period in his own career, mm-hmm. of having the substance that he was introducing into the bloodstream of the people being thoroughly rejected by certain areas mm-hmm. of the broader Jewish world. And yet now, most people love imbibing the substance of Rambam and love bringing his methodology and his perspective into their experience of consciousness, especially a religious consciousness. So I just, yeah, so what you were bringing up about the way that a Torah can expand consciousness, yeah, just brought me back to that Jules Evans quote about reading and the way in which it's not so different from these other modalities that we might think of as highly separate, but are actually maybe a little bit more adjacent.
Yeah. Or also just like as you're talking, I'm thinking about the interdimensionality of the oral tradition. That, like, I think you said, I forget what you said in the beginning, but like what this is like, okay, Tanya, here we are. We're hearing a voice from a certain place and time.
Right.
And then here's the conversation, and here it's pulling from here, and here it's pulling from here. So all, like, just in this short passage, we're in an interdimensional conversation across time and space, and also, like, because we're using technology across time and space with you, that, like, there's something really beautiful about the preserved oral tradition, as much as, like, there's a stagnancy when it's written, but, like, if we're actually learning it in the classical way, where we're reading it aloud and we're discussing it ourselves, it's like we're adding our voices to this interdimensional conversation.
Totally.
Which is pretty rad. And but also I think in, like, even in defining that, it's like shrinking the expansiveness of what's actually happening.
Yeah, and what's possible.
Yeah.
Much. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm so taken by these three, Rabbi Bena'a bringing in these three biblical passages to understand how Torah lishma, Torah for its own sake, can be like a drug of life. Because when I look at these three passages, the first one is, as you said before, Eitz Chaim Hi. We're talking about a tree.
Yeah.
Now, there are many associations throughout the tradition of what is the Eitz Chaim and how can we understand it? And classically, it often gets related by the rabbis to Torah. But when I look out my window, when I see an eitz, I see a tree. I see something from nature that produces fruits that I can bring into myself, that came from the earth. Right. So first we have this first text, which is, okay, a Torah that comes to bring life, a Torah which is a drug that brings life, is birthed from nature. Then another text, rifut tihi l'sharech. Rifut is refuah, it's a healing. So it's coming from nature, it's an agent of healing, but not just any healing, l'sharech, to my navel, to my shoresh, my core, my root. It affects a healing in the root of my consciousness. And is derived from nature. And then the last text, ki motz'i matzah chaim, because the ones that find me find life. That it induces a process of discovery, of finding. That something wasn't apparent, something was hidden, something was unable to be perceived. But a sam chaim and a Torat Chaim is something that discovers the divine. So, from nature, heals at the root of consciousness, allows for a discovering of the divine. That Torah is the Sam Chaim. I'm curious how that lands for you, and like sort of that sort of extension of those sources.
I think it's kind of, thank you for sharing how you read and interpret that. And also I think it has me kind of like out here, and I'm wanting to bring it into the realm of the practical, which has me thinking, like, also when you first read it, a question I had was like, what is Torah shelo lishma? Like what is in practice? Like, what is my Torah that is not, like, how could I be learning Torah not for the sake of itself? Like what, like in practice, how and where do we do that? that, and then can I think, like, to analogize that to death? Like, what's the impact? How does that feel? What's actually like being birthed from that kind of learning? What even is that kind of learning?
Well, I know that looking into this text a little bit more on the page of the Gemara where it's located, Tosfot, one of the classical commentators in the Gemara, seems to indicate that Torah shelo lishma is Torah for the sake of being able to call oneself a teacher, or to be able to be honored by others, to be able to stand up and say, I know something, I'm holding a piece of the total truth, and therefore I deserve a certain status. And Tosfot says that's the Torah that goes for the sake of that is lo lishma.
Okay.
So it seems to have from that one perspective.
So if it's like driven by egoic identity, by status,
by ego, like if the ego is centrally located in the motivational energy to learn, to absorb, and to then give over. If the ego is what's most at play, that's a good sign for Tosfot that is Torah lo lishma.
Okay. So if it's too directed, it's closed off to the kind of interdimensionality that's possible.
Sure.
Okay.
I was also thinking like Torah shelo lishma might be at risk of becoming frozen out from the delightful possibility of being wrong. Of being wrong and of not fully understanding. But that if we show up...
And the humility of owning that inevitability.
Yeah, and it might be that we miss out, a person might miss out on accessing that anava, that humility, when the Torah that they're doing and that they're engaging with is lo lishma. It's not for its own sake, but for the sake of the ego, let's say.
Okay. Well, I want to hear your thoughts on what's being brought here by bringing up Ha'egel Ha'arufa. Which also, like, in this time and place, that was in last week's Parsha.
Right.
So it's, like, particularly familiar.
Yeah.
And I have some thoughts, but I'm curious yours.
Well, this move that Rabbi Bena'a is making, seemingly, in the Breita between Arifa and Hariga, like seeing and bringing in the text from the Egel Arufa in order to indicate to us that when something is a sam mavet, when a Torah becomes a drug of death, what's happening potentially is the thing that we intend to restore, because the whole process, to my knowledge at this point in my development of the Egel Arufa, is part of a social restorative justice project. So it carries with it a sense of tikkun and restoration. But that restoration becomes potentially, in this case, corrupted. That actually a sam mavet, while intended towards restoration, is actually becomes a force for negation and the killing of something that is not for the sake of life. So that is a very snap first attempt at addressing that question. But I'm curious what thoughts you.
Yeah. So my thoughts are like. So the ritual, also some context, is like in a situation where a person has been murdered and it's not known who committed the murder. It's the elders, and I think also it's like the elders of the neighboring town come together to do a ritual of collective responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is they're saying this was our sin. Not that like
Mm-hmm.
and so something that's really clear to me from this account in Torah is that there's something about collective responsibility that it's like, it's actually, Torah's telling us that not only even when we are not directly responsible, but especially when we are not directly responsible, we're all responsible.
Mm.
And then to compare Torah Shelo Lishma to murder in this context, it's like, oof, okay, so how that to me, not that like Chazal takes things out of context all the time, and I may be putting it more in context than it's meant to be, but that's where I go with it. I think that's part of like the tree that Torah is that there are so many places to go, infinite places to go. But to me, there's something about like in community and in, like, as part of a people that's like devoted to learning, and that we gain life through the ongoing process of learning.